I think it's fair to say that ruckman can get a bad rap, where it's people in the media thinking that they're a bit dopey or consistently getting blamed for when things go wrong from fans. But I thought we could go through all 18 number one rucks, one from each club, and rank them from 1 to 18, with the stipulation being that these are not projections. This is not what I expect the list to look like at the end of 2024, 25, whatever. This is right now, if every single ruckman was available, and I could take my pick, same amount of years, same amount of money, everything equal, in what order would I want them at my club? And instead of 1 to 18, I'm going 18 to 1, because you've got to build some suspense with these things. Now, there are some clubs that do have more than one ruckman, so I'm just going to clear up that stipulation. Now, I've got Ivan Soldo over Jordan Sweet at Port Adelaide, so Ivan Soldo will be Port Adelaide's ruckman in these rankings. Hawthorn, Ned Reeves is going to go over Lloyd Meek. I don't think that one's going to be controversial at all, but I just thought I'd put that out there. I'm a massive fan of Toby Conway, but this isn't about my favourites. This is about where things actually stand. So Geelong's will be Reece Stanley, and West Coast's will be Matt Flynn over Bailey Williams, because I believe the Flynn acquisition actually means that Bailey Williams is going to become, I think, a modern-day David Hale, purely playing as a tall forward who can also go into the ruck, and I think he will thrive in that role. So Matty Flynn is going to be West Coast's number one ruck for this video, and Sean Darcy will be there over Luke Jackson. Everyone else, I'm reasonably confident is going to be relatively straightforward, and I'm also doing Riley O'Brien over Riley Thilthorpe for the Crows, although I suspect by mid-year that could genuinely change, and Riley O'Brien might be at a different football club in 2025, but maybe that'll be something for a different video. So hopefully we've got all that out of the way. 18 to 1. If I could have my pick of the number one rucks in the competition, here is the reverse order of how I'd pick them. 18, Matty Flynn. I do feel for Matty Flynn here because he did get replaced by Kieran Briggs at GWS, but he's going over to West Coast now, and he is going to have that number one ruck role. It makes no sense for him to be the number 2 at a premiership contender to then go be the number 2 at the wooden spoon contender. Makes no sense at all. I think we are in a position, and it could be for the first time, especially in my time watching footy, where there is no club, I believe there is no club that has the ruckman as a genuine weakness at all. So I kind of feel for Matty Flynn here, because this is a good bunch of ruckmen that we've got in the competition, and he just happens to be down there. I do like his work. I do like his tap work, but around the ground, I think he can lack a little bit of impact, but I have no doubt the fresh start is going to do him the world of good, and I still am looking forward to him playing. But if I had my choice of every number one rucks in the competition, Matty Flynn's probably the last one I'm leaving on the board. 17, I'm going Ivan Soldo, and it's not that I don't like Ivan Soldo, but the other rucks in the competition are of a pretty good standard. I would like to think, I'd be happy, probably really happy with the top 12 ruckmen on this list on my AFL list, don't get me wrong, and I still think you've got plenty to work with the others that are on this list. I think he's performed really nicely for Richmond without Toby Nankervis there. Has struggled a little bit with Nank there at times. Yes, there are going to be exceptions to every rule, I understand that. But how is he going to go with Jordan Sweet there? But with the rule that I stated, if they were the number one ruckman on my list, how would I go with Soldo? I just think it's a case of there are just better options out there rather than he's not a good one at all. I still think he's a good option, and Port Adelaide will do well with him. But just like Matty Flynn and probably a few others on this list, he's probably just burdened by the fact that we've got so many pretty good ruckmen. 16, Tristan Sherry got really stitched up by the fact that he got injured last year, and with Goldstein there last year, no longer there as we know, but Callum Coleman-Jones, they're still trialling in that ruck period as well. They were North last year. It's just, I feel like he could be a big riser. Hypothetically, let's say this was an annual video, you get one of these every January, I think Tristan Sherry would move the most on this list. But this isn't about where I think guys will be in 9 months' time, in 12 months' time. This is where they are now. So, North fans, I know you like Tristan Sherry. I like Tristan Sherry. But where we stand right now, if I could have every number one ruck in the competition, this is where he sits for me. And I think his projection-wise, we're looking at, I expect him to be top 12 probably of the number 1 rucks. And why couldn't he make a push towards that top 10 area if he can get a full season in? There's no reason to say that he can't. Bring it on. 15, Reece Stanley. This is going to seem harsh, his on-field performance. I know he's one of these much maligned ruckmen. He is a premiership ruckman, don't get me wrong, in that department, and more than a serviceable player. Age worries me a touch, but I just feel like I'm going to get a little bit more from the guys above them in a meaningful way. I think Reece Stanley's arc from whipping boy at St Kilda to early whipping boy at the Cats to very, very serviceable ruckman and a very nice cog in that Geelong Premiership team is one to celebrate. He's been good for the Cats, don't get me wrong. And like I've said earlier, I do feel bad doing these rankings sometimes because it's not like he's terrible down the bottom of the list. The same with all these guys. It's just that the bunch above are a reasonably good bunch, and then the upper echelon are just... 14, Sam Draper. I know he's got good highlights. I know that he's a ripping bloke. I know that he's got the mullet. He's got the charisma. He's got the cult heroism. He's got the charm. He needs the health. Not that outlandish, I don't think. He needs to be healthy. If he's not healthy, we're already in strife. But also, I think their work around the ground is something that he will work on and something that he needs to add to his game. And maybe the work on the ground as well. Although, I think that was a part pre-injury that he was really getting right. So hopefully the injuries aren't putting him too far back. And again, if we were to do projections, he would be higher on the list. And a guy I expect to take a leap in 2024. And for Essendon fans, my fingers are crossed. No one wishes injuries or bad seasons upon anyone. Not around here. 13, Ned Reeves. If I've got a really good midfield, then the bloke that can tap it to them is going to be reasonably important. The problem is that barring a couple of occasions in 2023, unfortunately the noodle's pretty invisible around the ground. Now, again, he does make up for it with that centre bounce work, but you're going to need to create a contest down the ground, hang on to your marks, and when required, just kick the thing as far as you can and go from there. That's something that's not entirely in Noodle's repertoire just yet, but I think he does need to be commended for being one of the best pure tap ruckmen in the competition and will probably comfortably sit top 5 in the league for that at the end of this year, fully fit. I like Noodle, and yes, ruckmen need to be able to do more than just tap the ball, but again, if I'm in this draft per se, and Ned Reeves ends up on my list, in no way am I complaining. Number 12, Riley O'Brien. The most underrated ruckman in the competition, nearly, for mine. Nearly. Now, again, he's had years, not last year, but he's had seasons where he's been more impactful, don't get me wrong. But just because you don't have a career best year, or maybe even a 2 years, doesn't mean that you've suddenly become crap. Yes, I think Riley Thilthorpe is the answer for the athletic ruck in the future. But if Riley O'Brien was up for trade at the end of the year, clubs would circle him. I've also liked what I've seen from Kieran Strahan. I hope that's how you pronounce his last name. But he's obviously not really in contention for the number 1 ruck spot, or even number 2 with O'Brien and Thilthorpe, wherever you stand. But Rob is more than serviceable. He's one of those guys that you could look at and go, we might need to make an upgrade, but he's certainly not a guy that you go, geez, the ruck's a weakness. Not even close. I'm a massive fan of Rob. Number 11, Mark Pittonet. All of last season, all we were seeing for hit-out percentage stats were Mark Pittonet leading the charge. A bit like Ned Reeves, the work around the ground is probably the weakness in his game, although he does do it a lot better than I think Ned Reeves and Riley O'Brien can do and does on a more consistent basis. That 4-year deal from the Blues was something that was looked at a bit mockingly. Now, I only think that's because of the Tom De Koning situation. The way he is able to help that Blues midfield thrive around the ground and around the stoppage is awesome, and he's also averaging nearly 2 stoppage clearances a game as well. So if you need to get down and dirty and just get the ball out of the way, get it out of the contest, gain some territory a couple times a game, 1 in each half, he's your man. Number 10, Darcy Cameron, the Premiership Ruckman, the reigning Premiership Ruckman being in number 10. Sounds crazy. I understand, sounds completely crazy, but again, He's only a victim of the guys that are above him and not his own ability. He can go forward, kick goals, does some nice things around the ground, and let's be honest, made Collingwood as big, if not a bigger, midfield threat post Brodie Grundy, which 3 years ago would have sounded completely stupid. Really took his chance after leaving Sydney with both hands, and again, he's one of those guys that you'd be absolutely chuffed ended up at your footy club with the way that he's playing. So, does this seem a little bit harsh? It potentially could, but for the life of me, I just can't get him higher, and there is no way in hell I'm putting him any lower. Number 9, Kieran Briggs. Is this an overreaction from his first breakout season? Don't think so. I think we saw enough of his work, not only with the ball in the air, but around the ground, his ability to be in the centre clearance, stoppage clearances, and the way he was able to impact games, even without the ball in his hands, getting a kick behind the ball at times as well, and making that GWS home ground a real fortress for them at times, I think shows us what a quality ruckman that we've got now. Is his season going to be the expectation moving forward? Potentially so. Is he going to be able to live up to that? Who the bloody hell knows? But I'm looking forward to finding out. But you would be pumped if Kieran Briggs was at your club, so much so that Matt Flynn has now gone to West Coast. That's a big effort, considering Matt Flynn was pretty much locked in as their number 1 ruck 2 years ago. I love everything I've seen from Briggsy, and I'm so pumped to watch him in 2024. Number 8, Toby Nankervis. When you're not that well liked by other clubs, but you are spoken of so glowingly internally, I'm pretty much always going to be on your side. Yes, he did some things in that Sydney game that were not okay. I think he knocked out Jake Lloyd. I mean, I was there that night, and I don't remember who he hit. I think it was Jake Lloyd. Someone correct me if I've gotten that wrong. But he's the skipper. He's tough. He was underrated during their premiership run, and he's the kind of guy that was just so dependable throughout that run, and a guy that is going to come in, be a leader, which is why he's high up on the list, a quality ruckman, and by, a few reports, a quality bloke as well. Whilst, yes, he does have a bit of white line fever, he's not the first, and he won't be the last to do that. Again, he probably sits on my podium for underrated ruckman in the league. He's not number 1, though, and we'll get there in a minute. Number 7, Brodie Grundy. I can hear you going, if this is based on who you'd pick now, how is Brodie Grundy so high considering what's happened in the last season or two? And I can kind of understand where you're coming from here. However, the way that Brodie plays the game, his ability to affect the contest and affect the ball when it's on the ground and effectively become another midfielder is just so enticing. Yes, age may be a concern, but you can't tell me that if the top 6 picks here went the way they did in a kind of draft and you've got every other ruckman on the board, you wouldn't be tempted to take Brodie. I absolutely would, and even though I'm going away from my rule here and just talking about the Sydney thing for a bit here, I think he's going to absolutely thrive there. I really do. Him and Nankervis was a coin flip for me personally. So yes, history may have had something to do with it. But again, I'm not hating the fact that I would be able to get either of these guys. But if it's Grundy or Nank, I'm giving the edge to Brodie at number 7 here. But number 6 is my most underrated ruckman in the competition. So just think about maybe some guys who are left. Who are you thinking, who does say is the most underrated ruckman in the competition? It's Oscar McInerney. It's Oscar McInerney, and for me, it's not really that close in terms of underrated ruckman, for reasons I'll explain when we get to number 5, just quietly. But the ability he's got to set up the Brisbane midfield, the ability that he's got to be in the right spot at the right time consistently, and his ability to do his job almost effortlessly in a very, very good team cannot be understated. Gets the job done, he's reasonably quiet, and I bloody love watching him. And according to Box Hill VFL coach Zane Littlejohn, who worked at Brisbane for a while, a massive Married at First Sight fan. Wouldn't have picked that for the 200centimetre big man. That probably should make him fall in my ranking, shouldn't it? Come on, Oscar, you're better than that. I totally haven't watched Married at First Sight with partners before. Number 5. And that man is Jared Witts. Now, I don't completely understand if someone's going to comment going, I think he's the most underrated ruckman in the competition. Now, if we're talking about media, I completely agree with you. But I think fans have come around to the fact that the Gold Coast Star is no longer underrated. And This is why I love footy fans so much. For the vitriol that fans can do and all these things, I can completely disagree with fans at times, but if there's one thing that I will happily march in the streets for, it'll be that Jared Witts is no longer an underrated player in the eyes of opposition fans. His ruck work is extraordinary. The leadership he's been able to provide Gold Coast, I love the fact he was able to take his second chance, and he's one of those guys that I think the more you watch, the more you appreciate. Definitely a top 5 ruckman in the competition for me, no questions asked. Number 4 is Sean Darcy, and the last of the big lumbering ruckman in air quotes, if you will. I just love how powerful he is now. Around the ground, you could argue the weakness of his game, but his ability to impact contests is extraordinary. Whether it is the centre clearance, whether it is the stoppage clearance, whatever it may be, Darcy's having an impact. What that looks like with Jackson now moving forward, considering they're both there in the long term, is going to be interesting. But remember, the rule at the start is that I wanted it for my side, and I'm picking my number 1 ruckman. So in this example, Luke Jackson's not around, in which case, if I'm at 4, give me Sean Darcy any day of the week. The man is a freak, and I absolutely love him. Number 3, the man that I think is going to be the All-Australian ruckman in 2024, but that's not why he's at number 3, is Rowan Marshall. Speaking of guys that can get around the ground and impact the game outside of any kind of stoppage, Rowan is your man. I would love if he was able to hit the scoreboard, maybe just a little bit more. But hey, if he's setting up scores in a midfield now that is improving at the Saints, and if they can get Marcus Windhager and Machito Owens even more midfield time, Owens hopefully not in the ruck. And why I say that is, can you imagine a ball up, a stoppage, or maybe a centre clearance with Marshall in the ruck, Owens, Windhager, and Mateus Filippo? I mean, that's almost the tallest starting centre bounce you could pretty much hope for. And that's, Windhager's not small, but he's not exactly large either. But, gee, speaking of blokes, I'm looking forward to watching in 2024. But Marshall himself, I mean, what more can you say? If you're not watching the Saints enough, then you might think, really, 3? But I don't know how you can disagree with the 3. You might disagree with the order, but I think if you're kicking Rowan Marshall out of the top 3, I just don't think you're watching him enough, is my personal opinion. Number 2, Timmy English. Now, considering I want to win a flag in this example, in the rules here, in one season, that's why I've got English at 2. If it was someone for the next 5 years, English probably is number 1. But like we said, this man can do everything but kick out from fullback. And a ruckman should never do that, unless you're playing the Hawks, in which case, thank you very much for doing that, Timmy. It's much appreciated. But, his stoppage work, his ability to mark around the ground, he's a better kick for a ruckman than I think we give him credit for. I don't think I can give Tim English any more prompts than I think you can find from nearly anyone else. But there really is only one man. One man that can be number 1. One man. I mean, it's Gorney. It's Gorney. Who else was it going to be? Leadership, around the ground work, ruck work, can kick goals. The further out, the better of a kick he is, I will give you that. But when you think of the ruck position in the modern AFL, for me, I just think of Max Gawn. It's as simple as that. And a bit like Tim English, what more am I going to say that is going to either convince people or talk up Maxi any more than he already gets? He's also one of my favourite players in the competition. I really did mull over, Gawn and English. I really did. But at the end of the day, if I've got the number 1 pick and every ruckman is available to me for 1 year to try to win a flag, give me the bloke that's done it. Max Gawn is my man at number 1. So what do you guys think of the order? Comment below. Let me know. Give me your full 1 to 18. Let me know what you'd change about mine. And I will say this, if you're only knocking a bloke up or down 1 or 2 spots, I'm still considering that a win. It's what's the egregious stuff is what I'm looking forward to reading in the comments below. If this video does well, I could do key defenders, small defenders, key forwards, small forwards at each club. I like experimenting with a few things, and the creating a best 22 out of the premiership sides flopped. So might put that idea away and shelve that for the near future, or the distant future as well, I should say. So fingers crossed this one can do well as well. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. Share with a footy or a ruck loving mate. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you very soon.